An artifact of the future is left behind by the people of the present. That was the first thing I learned from my mentor, Mr. Mike Liew. My name is Mike Liew, and I am from the thesis cluster Artifacts 3-Transaction. The thesis topic is artifacts as parts and whole. In order to design architecture for the future, we looked back at the architecture from its origin. We explored a lot on the transactions that occur within an artifact and the relationships between the transmitter and the receiver. When you think of an artifact, you think of an ancient relic or a tomb lost in the past and found today. And why do we do so? To answer the question, let's step foot onto the traffic island, the zone neglected by its neighbors, and find out more. The site is a vehicle impound lot located in Bandar Baru Sentul, alongside Gombak River and at the corner sanctioned by Jalan Sentul and Jalan 1/48A. It is neighbored with intimate but not overfilling density of communities, and they have high potential of harmonious and vigorous living, but were segregated into definite zones, with the commercial shophouses found on the west of the site, educational facilities to the north, medical facilities across the river, whilst low-cost residential filled the rest. The site is approximately 31,500 square meters, with direct access to both primary and secondary road and a 10-minute walking distance to the RT station. However, rapid development in the area causes contrasting gentrification to occur in this aged town. Besides that, the lack of function and difficulty for pedestrians to access had led to a neglected zone along this river. But I do believe that the corner lot poses a good opportunity to become an initiator to inject life along this neglected zone. So it raises the question, what makes an artifact that is to be found in the traffic island? And to that my answer is a mixed recreation and routine center. It's a mouthful, I know, but I will break it down for you. The recreational. The site is indeed in proximity to many intimate, low-cost apartments and flats. And one problem is that lack of recreational facilities like greens and parks, which my site is naturally rich in. Situated next to the Gombak River, the riverfront setting induces recreational and natural elements and is naturally the obvious into its response. The building as an artifact also protests against the rapidly developing Sentul. Before the lot falls victim to gentrification, the artifact aims to become an irreplaceable heart of the community, replenishing life to the riverfront. Subsequently, the building becomes an embedded artifact left behind by the present for the ideate future. And in order to do so, the building goes through a method of nature called becoming the landscape. In becoming the landscape, the artifact focuses upon 3 transactions. First of all, the artifact engraves into the landscape. The building is etched into the ground and becoming one with the earth. Architecture is but spaces formed in nature, occupied by humans. The ground below is now exposed to the public and all eyes are directed to the center. Second, the building envelope is deliberately petrified and weathers in nature. Mold and leaves become a part of the building material. Only when the building is seduced by nature, it also seduces its users. Third, the ground exists on multiple layers of this artifact. The multiple layers of the artifact remain connected to its surroundings, using various methods such as channels, slopes, and bridges. Of course, we have dwelt on the recreational part of the building for too long, and how nature is designed into the architecture. The artifact follows three principal constituents of the world, as described by Jones Partners architecture, which are the nature, objects, and humans. The center, in its name being the architecture of the artifact, also represents the objects of the three principal constituents. In order to define the objects, this thesis follows the theory of ontological reductionism, the position where every object is nothing but their parts. And after going through vigorous exploration, by dissecting art pieces such as the Burroughs by Studio Lipskin, my spontaneous art piece, the Fight Between Carnival by Peter Bruegel, Unknown by Mark Rothko, and many more, it is realized that the thesis also resonates with the theory of From the Doorknob to the City, where the good architecture discipline can be applied at a full range of skills. However, the explorations of the thesis in the first part realizes that the artifact felt temporal and incohesive as a functional system. Objects being the man-made product, the architecture is then inspired by a pocket watch, where the parts come together and become a functional system that ticks the clock. The ticking pocket watch begins with the jewel. Jewel reduces friction in the watch, therefore increases accuracy of the watch. And the parts in the artifact function to be specialized spaces adjusted for the needs of space, and it also sustains from solar and separates from the building to create privacy. And then we have the center wheel. Center wheel is the larger gear in the watch. Units of space containing necessary functions to sustain the daily routines of Sunto revolve around the building in a circular manner. It becomes the teeth that grinds the gear and activates the life in the architecture. Also, we have the mainspring barrel. Mainspring is coiled to store power winded in the watch, and these spaces are classrooms provided in response to give extracurricular studies or additional opportunities to students nearby, and then nurture the future generations of Sunto locals. Eventually, these parts of the artifact forms a functional whole, just as like this illustration of overlaying floor plans of the mixed recreational routine center. But the method to complete the artifact as a mixed routine center is the programs interjected according to the demographics. The building is designed, after all, for the Sunto locals. Just imagine approaching this island, seeing the embedded artifact from afar, and going underground to access. Proceed to find the entrance to the upper levels, and are invited to the expanding view towards the crater, revealing the impounded cars alongside the vehicles where you came from. On this floor, you travel around and experience each room in the center wheel. And as you circle around, each tunnel shows you a different view to different, definite zones around the site, and that's where the other humans or users comes in. The center wheel becomes the teeth that activate and inject lives onto the site. It does so by responding to the zones with a mixed-use program. This explains how mixed use is introduced to give more purpose to these families and attract more users from other definite zones. And this is where routine center comes in. Programs are to be frequent by the communities and in the direction of their zones. The rest of the parts comes as addition to the min-massing of the building to answer to more specific needs of the users from definite zones. While the parts form whole, there is a twist to that theory. An expansion to that where whole is in the parts too, in order to achieve harmony once more when complexity is generated. In the artifact, the families, the students, the white collars and etc. come together in this artifact and become a community that activates this traffic island. They represent the whole of community that comes into this small part of Sunto. And also, the architecture of the artifact contains call-out spaces for necessary functions and to give back to nature. Yet, the building is enveloped by nature and community while itself contains both nature and community. Lastly, nature takes over the architecture and engulfs the human. Sun, wind, and water seeps into the bare architecture, and now the human and architecture is dependent on the nature. The nature is ever more so pronounced when its presence determines the functionality of the spaces. Strangely enough, after all the pondering on the design of the mixed recreational routine center, all you really recognize is a discrete crater. It doesn't show itself to the wider community that speaks of an intrusive artifact, but one you find as if it had always been there. And with all three principal constituents now blurring the boundary of being part and whole, I hope this artifact becomes a valuable relic to the community in the future, and perhaps a place someday you would step foot into.